So you have a reputation for innovation even before you got to Consumer Reports, and I had such a fascinating conversation with you ahead, talking about the types of things that you've had to do with this legacy organization, not just to be relevant in terms of privacy, but sort of new product segments that you've put into place to appeal to today's consumer. We were talking a little bit about, babies, and we talked about green. Could you share some of that?
So you're right. This organization's been around for 87 years, and so we have some really loyal customers that keep coming back because they know how trusted we are, that we've come through for them in the past. But if you are a digital native and you're growing up now and you've got all these choices and they're all free, and doesn't matter how many times you tell someone, that's an ad. It's not an impartial opinion. It's an ad. Do you see the little AD in the box? That's what that means. It's a sponsored, means somebody's paying for you to see that. So, we were thinking about the time in your life where amazing things happen. Whether you're a new parent, you're going to buy a new home, you're going to buy a new car, and no one has told you how to go about doing any of those things. And so you want to go to someone you trust. You don't want to just start looking through advertising. On the baby front, that's a place that we know many people, all of us, go into the marketplace and assume that everything that you find is tested and is safe. And you go and you buy it and you bring it home. That is just not the case. And there is no one more concerned about safety than a new parent. And unfortunately, we have had some horrific things happen in the marketplace. And we had to go up against one of the most trusted brands, Fisher-Price, because we did have data and evidence that one of their products was responsible for over 100 deaths of infants because of the inclination of the sleeper and how it impacted a child, a newborn's trachea and ability. And we weren't able to get them to do the right thing until we went public with the data that was inadvertently shared with us by the Consumer Product Safety Commission. And in 24 hours, there was a total recall. So it just gives you an inkling as to the severity of what this is. Same with this new toy called water beads. These are jellied marbles that kids play in their bathtub, and when they ingest them, they grow, and some children have died as a result. We just got those off the market a couple of weeks ago. But all this to say is that new parents need to be able to go somewhere. And so what we had to do was, in like 2 months' time, we stood up about 40 different categories in the new baby space to start to be a go-to place for new parents. If you want a trusted source for what to do and how to do that as well. The other is, obviously, people are buying EVs, and they're buying quote-unquote, self-driving cars. And so we've had to stand up a new way to test our cars so that we can test how those cameras on your car are responding to the roadside when you're driving and how safe they are. And what we learned, it's fascinating. We have a fork in the road, a proverbial fork in the road on the test track. And what we know is that some cars always favor right and some always favor left. These are things you have to learn about cars. And we've also, in some of what we did, mostly Tesla, we have tried to impress upon a lot of this automated driving that you've got to do something in the car to ensure that their driver is actually watching the road, that they're not self-driving cars. And so a lot of some of the new features in the car are really about making sure that the driver is face forward and looking at the car so they have the right response time to do that. And it's really, there's the other, I think some of the other things we've had to do is also on EVs, what a lot of people don't know. It's excellent to see so much innovation around electric vehicles. They're also really hard on your tires and the weight of the battery. And so trying to look at what kind of investment you're going to need to make and how many miles you can go before you actually have to replace all your tires. So it's a very different way of looking at some of the cars that we test and how we test them based on the innovation that is out in the market. But our mission is unchanged. We are all about having a fair and transparent marketplace. But the way we test and the kind of products that we have to put out there have changed quite a bit as a result.
So let's talk a little bit then about leadership, right? Leading a mission-driven organization. How does that, in your mind, differ from, say, running a publicly traded corporation or a otherwise for-profit entity?
It's tough. It's really tough. As I said earlier, 90% of our revenue comes from our members. But as a social enterprise, all of the whatever margin I have, which is very minimal, gets poured back into the social enterprise to do good. And if I want to develop a new app, I can't go knock on a VC's office in Silicon Valley. I have to knock on a donor. I have to impress upon an institutional philanthropy that moves a little slower than perhaps a VC company. And so that's how I was able to raise money for Permission Slip. That's how we have to self-fund things to keep forward. So it's very difficult because we have a double bottom line, right? We have to earn revenue, but we also have to make the marketplace safer, fair, better. We have to codify laws where none exist. We have to incentivize the marketplace. And at a time where the competition is really stiff. And the way people find us is on the internet and on Google, right? And we know that that's a monopoly. That's where most of us go to search. And it costs money for your search terms to appear, right? You bid on search terms. We don't have the deep pockets that a lot of other platforms have. And so we have to come up with really ingenious ways for you to find us so that you can get access to trusted information that hasn't been bought or sold or sponsored by something else that is collecting revenue every time you click onto it. So, then enter AI. And what is that going to do to search? And what is that going to do to transparency and accuracy? Right now we're being allowed to sort of play with AI without really understanding what's driving it and the quality of the data that's being poured into it. But that doesn't mean we should sit back and not innovate. So we're using AI, and I'm using it in a very transparent way. We're using it to update some articles and to automate that, but we label that. We want you to know. If you're looking at an updated article as we've used AI, we want you to know that. We know that we have an enormous amount of trusted data. So what we are experimenting with is using that trusted data and creating a large language model that is trusted and walled and that you could come to, and in more conversational mode, you can search for trusted data that way. I think we have to start setting examples of what does it mean to have responsible AI. This is a remarkable technology. It's going to be exceptionally transformative, but we should be leading the way, and other social enterprises should do as well, to demonstrate what are the principles that should guide this? Well, what does it mean to have transparent AI? If it's, how biased is the data? How rigorous is that data? What kind of quality is that data? We don't have the rules of the road for that. So we're trying to model how one might do that. How accurate is the data? How much bias is in the data? It's only as good as the quality of that data. These are all pretty much unknowns out there. So it really is a remarkable opportunity to be able to use to be present in an organization like this, but it can also feel overwhelming because there are a handful of very large companies with their billion-dollar enterprises, but we feel like that little engine that could. But I will say that we have incredible impact, I think, because consumers stand behind us. And I think if you're an entrepreneur and you have a car and you have a product and we knock on your door, more often than not, people listen to what we say. And sometimes the response is, you don't know what you're talking about. And then we get a second call. They're like, could you walk us through the data? And we do. Elon Musk has been one of those people, I think publicly. He loves to trash us. But, you know, when we discovered that one of his cars wasn't braking properly, they did an over-the-air fix, and it was taken care of. That's also the magic of technology. Recalls are flawed. But when the Samsung phone started exploding on people, all they need to do was shut them down with software. That's pretty remarkable. So I think one has to look at the bright side of technology as well, and the power of technology, as well as the ways in which we have to set standards for what we want our technology to be, and how the technology can be human-centered and not just looked at as a profit-making vehicle that doesn't really consider consumer welfare.